The next thing we're going to use is some dyed yellow ring cat tail. As you can see, it's a very beautiful material, and I'm just going to use the yellow section itself. So I've just cut some off from where the fur touches the skin. Now, to prepare hair, as we have here, I'm going to hold it from the tip first, pull any excess. Now, this particular hair doesn't really need to be combed. You could always comb it also just to get the last of the basal fibres out. However, as you can see, that's it all gone. The next thing, just make sure everything's pulled from the tip, and then we're going to use a hair stacker. And to use the hair stacker, very simple, place the hair inside the stacker itself. Doesn't matter where you get your stacker from. A few taps on the tying desk, so all the tips are going to be the same. I just remove, and the tips of the fibres are all the same length. Now with my fingers I'm just creating a wee tube. I'm going to place that hair on top of the hook shank with the tips of the fibre of the hair just meeting where the end of the tail of the fly is. As ever, pinch and loop. I'm just going to give it initially a couple of turns. Now, a lot of fly tyers I know at this point would apply some super glue to the actual tie-in point of the hair. However, the best way of doing it, I find, is the rotation of when the thread is made is usually clockwise. So if I turn the thread anti-clockwise, as you can see, all I've done is spin the bobbin. That unwraps the thread. So then I've got loose thread going on top. Spin it the opposite way. Put some quite tight turns in. Now the excuse me, the ideal scenario would be to use a blade of some sort to cut this hair. However, I've tried all kinds of blades and I just do not seem to get on with them at all, so I'm going to use the old-fashioned method of using a pair of scissors, which does take a lot longer because obviously we have to trim here because we're not getting as close as what we would do with a blade. But as I say, I don't seem to be able to cut the hair quite as well, and we need to just take as much of that hair off there, as you can see, as possible. Do it from all angles. So it takes a little bit of time this way. I just prefer it. So again now, just going to tie the rest of those fibres in, and to finish this fly we're just going to give it a hackle of black cock. Now whenever we're doing our salmon flies, you will hear or read in a lot of patterns that we need to double the hackle. There's a lot of different ways to double the hackle. Before I tie in, I've prepared the feather by pulling back some of the fibres to reveal the stalk, using a wet finger and thumb. Pull those fibres back so they're out of the way from when we're tying. Tie that in as so, around the back. Now, as I was saying, a lot of people, or a lot of patterns will require you to double a hackle. The easiest way I find is to first pull the hackle back so there's a little bit of a bend so it's easier to turn. using a curved pair of scissors, rub against the hackle stalk, and then using our hackle pliers, clip the hackle pliers onto the stalk and just use my finger and thumb. You can see all I'm doing is stroking those fibres back. Obviously the more I stroke them back, the more doubled that hackle will be, but as you can see there's a very quick way of doing it. So then we place the hackle in touching turns, too much pressure there on my hackle with my hackle pliers. Okay. Tighten again there. It's got a little bit of ride because to be honest, it's quite difficult to tie with the camera in front of me because I've got to sort of lean over, which is why the hackle is twisted slightly. Lean over the camera so you can get a view of how I'm actually tying the fly. So I pulled all the fibres back. I'm just going to make a nice wee neat head with the thread, make sure everything's good and tight. There we go, because you want that hackle to go quite close to the body, as you can see. And then I'm going to use my whip finish tool, and I'll pull back so you can see the whip finish. So I have my thread and the two hooks on my whip finish. Top hook, bottom hook is in the thread. We pull it away from ourselves to make our triangle. 1, 2, 3. I'll do it again a bit slower. I always double whip, but finish all my salmon and saltwater flies anyway. So we make our triangle. We put the top hook, little hook, put them both in the thread. Turn the whip finish tool away from us. 1, 2, 3. Pull this one off first. Pull with the bobbin. Make sure everything's good and tight, which it is. Trim. And then just apply some varnish to finish the fly. Now I always use, again, personal preference, I've used varnish applicators. I find they're very good, but for these flies I much prefer using a dubbing needle, just to make sure and give everything a good soak with varnish. There you go. And that's the finished fly, the Berthdee Munroe variant on a size 8 salmon double.